So, part 3 of Power and Changing Societies. In the last video, I was just trying to quickly go over that we have more than just the volatile, fearful, ethnocentric, combative human nature. If given the right opportunities and given the correct environment, we can flourish in other ways too. Other aspects of ourselves can come out and perhaps have a more balanced equilibrium with other people, a more positive aspect, a more harmonious balance of society, which does not exist at the moment. If we can bring out these aspects more through the invention of better technology, through some kind of better approaches to running society, then we could hopefully see a change. Because I'm trying to take a realistic stance here. Because obviously there's a lot of problems in the world and they're not going to just be solved by a different outlook. But I think a complex mixture of technology, of cultural implications, exposure, and interdependence and interconnection, bringing, realizing that these things will bring out different modes of human nature, besides the violent, defensive, tribal aspect, will create a better equilibrium. Because these things are part of who we are already. We are social beings as much as we are defensive beings, you know? So if we make the world our community, if we become world-centric, then it's very difficult to find an other, because we have a history of making people others and fighting against them. And that wall, that boundary we create between self and other, and I don't mean this fundamentally as a dualism of Buddhism. That's true as well, but I'm talking more of us versus them, ethnocentric mentalities that pervade societies. Um, Imagine living in a third world country where they have as much access to the internet instantaneously as we do, because now the internet is as cheap as a bucket of water. And I know there are places where even that is expensive, but um, just keep in mind this is just as an example. The rate at which technology is evolving, and the rate at which it's becoming easier and easier to link up the world itself is shrinking, and exposure to different peoples, places, and cultures is expanding. So the exposure to each other is growing, and the distance from each other is shrinking. So we're going to have to live together in this century, very much in this century, or we're going to beat each other to death, because there's not going to be any more room uh, for differences anymore. Um, Not necessarily saying like we all have to be the same, but there's not going to be any more room to fight about our differences. We're going to be basically, the world is going to be like a Manhattan. Everybody from all over the world is going to be stuck on a tiny little island, tiny, one pale blue dot. And because of that, we won't be able to fight so easily and so willingly about our differences. And as Carl Sagan says, all history, every king, every emperor, every lover, and every great movie and story and everything that's ever happened has happened on this tiny pale blue dot in the universe. I mean, this is going to become less of a nice story that Sagan has pictured for us, which is a reality, and it's going to become more of a living reality, because as technology is going to expand, the world is going to shrink, and the reality of the pale blue dot we're going to have to live with. So I read in a magazine the other day, it said something like "Evolve or die." We are the generation of evolve or die, the mantra, and to some degree that's true, because we're not going to be able to continue to act the way we have in this situation. And I'm hoping that since there are going to be new variables, and mind you, they're very complex, but trying to generally begin to introduce ourselves to these new variables, they allow us to become like a Manhattan, like a New York City, where everybody is forced to see each other and speak to each other. Um, we will be raised with different cultures and people and places basically from our home. If you're raised, I mean, I don't even know what this is like because I'm too old now to have grown up. I didn't grow up with the internet until like 6th, 7th grade. I didn't have a computer till then. So I don't even know what it's like for kids who are growing up now, but kids who are growing up now are exposed to the internet. They're exposed to everybody. And yeah, they may not be allowed to go on the websites and all that, but the decentralization and the world is becoming more and more on the web, and the web is sort of a new way to see everyone. And it's a new way to communicate, and it links up the world. So, in other words, new technologies are shrinking the world, and I keep emphasizing this, but this is very important because this is probably the thing that will cause a lot more conflict, um, a big challenge for us, and b allow us the opportunity to get used to each other, because that's going to be happening a lot. We're going to have to get very used to seeing each other's faces, as you're looking at mine right now. I mean, I would have never thought as a child that I would be talking on a video blog, hanging out in my basement on spring vacation, um, talking to people across the world. I mean, that's like it's unfathomable. But imagine being raised like this, you know, from a toddler up, uh, being born now and then being raised like this from a toddler up. It's truly astounding. And the more people can experience this, it's not just going to be, um, you know, middle class America anymore, and middle and upper class. It's going to be more lower classes. It's going to be cheaper and easier to have this sort of technology. The internet itself is a means to express and reach out to third world countries through open source movements that I'm sure we can have great examples from TED Talks, TED.com, about open source architecture, organizations that go into third world countries and help design. The whole internet community is open to help design architecture for particular communities in particular places with specific needs, and it's flourishing. It's working very well, and that's just one example. Um, I think that we're seeing an explosion of these new technologies and these new ideas as a result of these technologies and this circular nature that is going to really influence the way society runs. And old, slower, clunkier things such as centralized institutions that work very slow and often work with bureaucracy are not going to they're not going to work. And it's not that we're going to be idealistic and give them up because we have this vision. There will be some of us who do that, but for the most part, we're finding a better way to run society for the first time. Well, we've been finding better and better ways the whole time. I'd hope. I think, but we are finally finding a way that is really beginning to reach out and really beginning to democratize and decentralize everything. And because of that, we are at last um, seeing perhaps a real potential for true democratic, more individual empowered, community empowered um, governments and media and businesses and economies. This is the first time in history this happening, and the old modes of thought are collapsing. They're falling down. They're they're not working, and for the first time, I could probably healthily say that in a few years, as the technological evolution is happening at a faster and faster rate, despite the economic crisis, these things are going to help bring people out of this mess. They're going to allow more open source economies, more free information, because we're not going to be able to afford such a centralized, bulky way. People are just going to want this sort of thing because it works better, and it's going to be an actual competitive force which will eventually topple the existing paradigm. And I think I'll end here. Please give me your comments. Thank you for listening.